My sister-in-law hid every trace of my wedding invite, but she didn't expect the bride to announce my name first. The family group chat was in chaos, but not the bad kind, the excited kind. My phone was buzzing constantly as everyone gushed over Jake and Amber's wedding invitations. OMG, the invites are stunning. My cousin, Sarah, had posted a close-up picture of the elegant white envelope with its gold seal. Reply after reply was the same, praise for the fancy paper and excitement for the big day. But my own mailbox remained painfully empty. Later, I saw Amber at the grocery store. Her smile was sickly sweet. "Oh, didn't you get yours, Mia?" she asked, without meeting my eyes. "Maybe it got lost in the mail." I forced a weak smile and nodded. I knew the truth. Nothing was lost. I had been deliberately excluded. That Sunday, family brunch was excruciating. Amber, seated next to my mother-in-law, monopolized the conversation. She was describing the wedding in agonizing detail. She waved her hands as she talked about the emerald green color scheme and the precise seating arrangement. "Of course, all the closest family will be right up at the head table," she cooed, casting a glance that seemed to skip right over me. My mother-in-law kept her eyes downcast, shifting uncomfortably in her chair. It hit me then. I wasn't just missing an envelope, I was missing from their entire vision of the family. I swallowed the lump forming in my throat and forced myself to laugh along, pretending her cruel omission didn't matter. A few days later, Amber sent me a text message. It was a perfect, typed-out attempt at damage control. "So sorry about the invite, Mia. It was just a huge oversight on my part," she wrote, promising to send one immediately. I almost let my guard down, almost believed it was a mistake. But as I was walking past a cafe near my office, I heard her voice. She was talking to her cousin, and the sound of her laughter made my blood run cold. "Honestly, I didn't want her there," Amber said with a dismissive wave of her hand. "She just ruins every photo with that perpetually stressed-out look." The apology was just another lie. The betrayal of hearing her cruel, true feelings cut me deeper than any rejection ever could. I needed an honest answer, so I called Jake. "Why am I the only one who wasn't invited?" I asked, struggling to sound calm. He hesitated for what felt like an hour. "Amber thought you'd make things tense," he finally mumbled, sounding deeply ashamed. Tense, I thought, the word burning in my mind. Tense. I had practically raised him after our parents died. I had sacrificed my own young adult life to make sure he had one. I paid his college tuition, went to every graduation, and celebrated every milestone. I was his foundation, not his problem. I couldn't speak another word. I just hung up, the tears I had been fighting back finally streaming down my face. That night, I felt the deepest loneliness I had ever known. I lay curled up on my sofa, scrolling through my cousin's social media, watching the happy, glamorous countdown to the wedding. I saw pictures of the venue, the expensive gifts, the perfect life I was being excluded from. They erased me. I whispered into the darkness, the words raw with pain. I felt like a ghost, a forgotten history. But then, the tears dried. A cold, analytical calm washed over me, replacing the grief. I stood up, wiping my eyes with sudden resolve. "Not for long," I muttered. My sadness was over, the strategy was beginning. I needed to escape the suffocating silence of my apartment, so I drove to my mother's old house and headed to the dusty attic. I was looking for comfort, but I found something much more powerful. I found an old photo album. Inside, among the faded pictures of my late father and a baby Jake, was a single, official document. My heart started to pound as I realized what it was, a property deed. It listed my name, Mia Carter, as the sole owner of the land. It was a detail I hadn't thought about in years, a safeguard our father had put in place long ago. My hands shook as I realized the incredible power this small piece of paper held. I called Mr. Jones, the family lawyer. I spoke quickly, my voice tight with excitement and disbelief. "I have a property deed here for the land where the old family house stands," I explained. "It says it's in my name." The lawyer confirmed it immediately. "Yes, Miss Carter. Your father established a private trust. Jake owns the physical house structure, but the land itself was legally transferred to you after your parents' passing." I drew a sharp breath. "So technically," I asked, letting the implication wash over me, They're hosting this entire wedding on my land? The lawyer paused, then simply said, technically yes. A week before the wedding, I decided to do some reconnaissance. I drove to Amber's house and saw her car in the driveway. I glanced through the window and saw a familiar white envelope stuffed into the glove box. It was my lost wedding invitation. The one she'd claimed was an oversight. My blood ran cold, but I didn't lose my composure. I quickly pulled out my phone and took a clear photo of the envelope, my name perfectly visible on the front. This was definitive proof. Proof that she hadn't forgotten. She had consciously, deliberately hidden it. That photo was no longer just proof of deceit. It was the first piece of my revenge. Amber was busy spreading rumors. She told everyone I had declined the invitation because I was too busy or too antisocial. I heard the gossip and the pitying glances, but I remained silent. My revenge, I decided, had to be perfect. If I spoke now, I would look desperate, and I would give away my hand. I wanted the humiliation to be complete, public, and undeniable. She wanted me to be the bitter, invisible sister-in-law. I would play that role, fading into the background, allowing her false reality to become totally believable right up until the moment it shattered. I stood outside the wedding venue the night before the ceremony. It was a magnificent sight, bathed in string lights, draped in luxurious white silk, the perfect stage for their elaborate lie. I watched the final touches being made, the massive floral arrangements, the tent anchored firmly into the ground. No one noticed the quiet woman standing in the parking lot. They didn't see the true owner. I felt the cold, hard resolve in my chest. I gently touched the property deed tucked safely into my coat pocket. "Let the show begin," I whispered, the silent promise hanging in the cool night air. The morning of the wedding was a spectacle of expensive cars and dazzling outfits. I drove up to the venue, a ghost in plain clothes amidst the luxurious chaos. Amber's entourage, all matching bridesmaids and her mother, stopped their cheerful chatter when they saw me calmly approaching the house. Amber, wearing a robe that must have cost a fortune, marched toward me. "You weren't invited, Mia," she sneered, her voice a low, hostile whisper. I didn't engage in a verbal fight. Instead, I calmly reached into my bag and pulled out the property deed. I held it so she could see the official seal. "This is my property," I stated, meeting her hateful gaze. "I go where I please." Amber's face was a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. She ran inside to find Jake, the heels of her slippers clicking wildly on the hardwood floor. Through the window, I could see her shouting and gesturing with frantic abandon. "She's ruining everything." I heard her high-pitched shriek. Jake, looking completely overwhelmed in his pristine tuxedo, simply hung his head. He walked back to the door and spoke quietly to a security guard. "Just let her watch from the back, keep her out of sight." He couldn't even look at me. I offered a slight, knowing smile. That was precisely the positioning I needed for my final move. I found a discreet spot near the catering area and called my lawyer. "They've given me access, but they're treating me like a criminal," I reported, keeping my voice low. "The plan remains the same. I need you to keep the paperwork ready." I instructed him to wait for my signal. "If they disrespect me again, if Amber says one more cruel thing, I want you to proceed with step 2 immediately." My lawyer, Mr. Jones, sounded intrigued. "And step 2 is?" he asked. "The eviction notice." I confirmed, my voice hardening. "I want it delivered right in the middle of the reception." The guests arrived, filling the seats, their excited murmurs blending with the soft music of the string quartet. I sat in the very last row, silent and invisible, just as Amber had tried to make me. The ceremony began. The officiant, a family friend, stepped up to the altar. Unbeknownst to Amber, when Jake had asked me for a large, last-minute loan to cover the venue deposit, I had made a specific request to the wedding planner. The deposit must be listed as a property donation from me. The planner, focused on getting paid, had agreed without question. The officiant began the ceremony. He paused, looking at his notes, a warm smile on his face. "Before we join this beautiful couple," he announced, his voice ringing clearly over the sound system, "we must acknowledge the generosity of the person who provided this stunning location." The air in the tent suddenly thickened. He continued, beaming, "A huge thank you to the property donor and family benefactor, Ms. Mia Carter. The collective gasp from the guests was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. I watched Amber at the altar, her body freezing completely, her perfect smile shattered. The gasps quickly turned into a wave of confused, hushed whispers. "Jake's sister? She owns this place." I heard a cousin behind me whisper loudly. Amber's composure broke completely. She looked like a deer caught in headlights, desperately searching for an explanation. Jake's head snapped toward me, his face a painful mix of guilt, confusion, and fear. I looked him straight in the eye and gave him a tiny, firm nod. I was not there to cause a scene. I was there to confirm a fact. The ceremony continued, but the atmosphere was irreparably broken. The ceremony ended in a strange, uneasy quiet. During the group photos, the official photographer, following his list, made another accidental announcement. "Okay, for the VIP shot by the fountain, Amber, Jake, Aunt Susan, and Mia." Amber let out a small, enraged sound. She rushed toward the photographer, her voice a desperate hiss. "Remove her name right now," she demanded. The photographer was confused. "Sorry, ma'am, but the planner gave me a list. Said Miss Carter was the one who funded the main decor deposit." Amber's face went pale. Her attempt to erase me was failing spectacularly. Amber grabbed Jake's arm and dragged him behind a floral arrangement, her whisper frantic. "Why is her name on all the lists? Why is she the donor?" she demanded. Jake looked utterly defeated. "Because she paid for half of this, Amber." "You knew I took a loan from her," he muttered, running a hand over his face. What he didn't realize was that I knew he needed the money, and I had simply structured the payment to benefit my strategic position. Amber, so focused on excluding me socially, hadn't paid attention to the legal and financial details. The facade of her perfect wedding was crumbling fast. Amber tried to regain control by taking selfies near the expensive, ornate front door of the house. She posed, smiled tightly, and framed her shot perfectly. Just as she clicked the photo, I walked up behind her. "Careful," I said casually, my voice loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. "That's private property." I watched her expression darken. "Wouldn't want to look like you're trespassing at your own wedding." A few of the guests who overheard couldn't stifle their nervous laughter. Amber's shame was becoming a public spectacle, and the crowd was enjoying the show. Amber leaned in close, her eyes narrowed with pure hostility. "You're just a bitter, single loser, Mia," she hissed, trying one last time to gain the upper hand. "You're ruining this because you're jealous." I waited until she finished, my face completely calm. I dropped my voice to a dangerous, low whisper that only she could hear. "Funny," I said, giving her a small, empty smile. "The loser owns your wedding." The reception was about to start, and the true entertainment had just begun. The wedding reception dinner began under the huge white tent, but the mood was anything but celebratory. It was thick with tension, with all eyes occasionally darting to my table. Amber, desperate to reclaim her narrative, stood up and raised her glass. "To family," she declared, her voice unnaturally loud. She paused for effect, and to wisely cutting out the negativity that always tries to drag us down and create drama. She intentionally locked eyes with me. I didn't flinch. I slowly rose, picked up my champagne flute, and met her gaze directly. "Cheers to that," I responded calmly, taking a deliberate sip of my drink. My quiet composure only seemed to make her more furious, as she realized I wouldn't be bullied into leaving. Amber's brother, looking extremely nervous, stepped up to the podium to start the Jake and Amber's love story video montage. The lights dimmed, and the music started. Initially, the screen showed the expected professional photos and carefully curated snapshots of their romance. But suddenly, the projector flickered, and the screen filled with old, faded photographs of a different, more complicated kind of love. The crowd gasped as a picture of me, barely an adult, holding a tiny, red-faced baby Jake appeared. I had carefully edited the file names of the montage last night, making sure my story was embedded within theirs. The soft, romantic background music suddenly provided a heartbreaking soundtrack to my life with Jake. The crowd watched as our history unfolded. A photo of me helping him with homework, another of me cheering him on at his Little League game, and a final, emotional shot of me hugging him fiercely the day he left for college. This was not the story Amber wanted told. The gasps in the room turned into sympathetic murmurs. I sat straight and dignified, tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to wipe them away. I raised him, I whispered, not caring who heard me. I deserve a seat here, not because I'm family, but because I was his mother. Amber couldn't stand the sudden, powerful shift of sympathy toward me. She stormed away from the head table and fled the tent, her silk dress rustling loudly, leaving a trail of running mascara behind her. How dare she make this about her? She shrieked just outside the entrance, loud enough for half the tent to hear. The guests didn't follow her. Instead, they began murmuring to each other, their whispers filled with sudden disapproval for the runaway bride. The true source of tension and negativity was now undeniable. Amber's facade had shattered, and the narrative of the bitter sister had completely collapsed. The moment I had orchestrated finally arrived, delivering the first huge blow of the true reckoning. Mid-reception, a serious-looking man in a dark suit walked confidently into the tent. He was clearly an official and completely out of place. He went straight to the head table and placed a large, thick white envelope in front of Amber's sister. "Official notice," he announced, his voice carrying authority. "Permission for the use of this venue, this property, expires precisely at midnight tonight. All possessions must be removed by 12:01 a.m. Amber's sister read the paper, her jaw dropping in utter panic. She raced out of the tent to find Amber. I stood up, walking slowly and deliberately to the front, feeling the weight of every eye in the room upon me. Amber, having rushed back into the tent, was screaming at the lawyer who was already walking away. I stepped right into her path. I looked her straight in the eyes, which were wide with terror. "Amber," I said, my voice cutting through her panic, "you forgot to include me in the wedding invitation." I let the sentence hang in the silent air. "So," I concluded, a cold satisfaction flooding me, "I decided to include you in my property ownership paperwork." A stunned silence gripped the massive tent. I smoothly walked over to the DJ booth and took the microphone. I stared out at the entire extended family and all the guests. "You were all invited here tonight onto my land," I announced, my voice clear and firm. "In the home my father built for our family." I held up the microphone, letting the gravity of the moment settle. I wasn't missing from this wedding. I made it possible. The implications were clear. Every single toast, dance, and moment of their expensive celebration was currently happening because of the woman they had actively tried to erase. The combined shock of the property announcement and my public address was too much for Amber. Her eyes fluttered, and with a small, choked sound, she collapsed, falling in a heap of white silk onto the expensive dance floor. She had literally fainted from the public humiliation. Jake rushed to her side, his face a picture of absolute horror and conflict. He was trapped between his unconscious bride and the sister he had betrayed. I simply placed the microphone back on the stand. I calmly walked off the stage, leaving the chaos behind me. By the next morning, the sheer drama of the event had exploded online. The clips of the wedding owner reveal and the fainting bride were everywhere. TikTok and YouTube were saturated with the footage. The comments poured in by the thousands. "This is karma executed perfectly," and never underestimate the quiet sister-in-law. My story was no longer private. It was a global lesson in justice. My revenge wasn't just sweet and immediate, it was viral and irreversible. Amber's family, mortified by the public backlash, weakly demanded that I apologize for ruining the night. But Jake finally found his spine. He stood by me, exhausted but firm. "She deserved respect," he told his new in-laws. "You hid her invitation and used the home she paid for." He chose to side with the truth, which was all I ever wanted. The family divide was complete, and the balance of judgment shifted entirely onto Amber. The party was over, and the consequences had just arrived. A week after the dramatic wedding debacle, I was working from home when I received angry calls from the old neighbors. They were complaining about excessive noise and rowdy behavior coming from the house. It was Amber, of course, throwing a post-wedding party, desperately trying to prove she was still happy and popular. She and Jake were treating the house as their own, temporary rental. I calmly called the sheriff's non-emergency line. "I'm calling about a matter of trespassing on private property," I stated clearly. "The license for the venue expired at midnight, and the occupants are now squatting. I requested that the police remove the trespassers from my land immediately." Amber's humiliation continued to grow as her story became a viral joke. She was mercilessly mocked online and given cruel nicknames like the Fainting Bride and the Tenant Bride. Her image, which she had spent years carefully building, was completely ruined. Because of the negative publicity and the documented case of family betrayal, all of her brand collaboration offers, the clothes, the makeup, the sponsored posts, were abruptly dropped. The very social standing she had prioritized over our family relationship was utterly destroyed, proving that karma was both swift and financially devastating. I made a huge, life-changing decision about the property. I sold the majority of the undeveloped land to a huge, luxury event management company. It was a massive sum of money, setting me up for life. But my lawyer ensured one crucial clause was written into the contract in permanent ink. The clause stipulated, no events associated, directly or indirectly, with Amber Lewis, her immediate family, or any affiliated businesses are permitted on this venue. They signed it without a fuss. Amber would forever be barred from the very ground she had schemed to possess. A few weeks later, a major national lifestyle magazine requested an exclusive interview. They wanted to know the emotional toll of the betrayal and, more importantly, why I had waited until the ceremony to reveal my secret. They called it the perfect slow burn strategy. I explained my motives clearly. I knew confronting her privately would just lead to more lies and gaslighting, I said. I kept quiet not out of fear, but because silence makes the reveal louder. The article positioned me as a woman of immense composure and strategic genius, completely dismantling Amber's attempt to paint me as a bitter loser. Jake finally came to my apartment alone. He looked incredibly drained and remorseful. He didn't try to defend Amber or make excuses for himself. I let her lie completely blind me, he admitted, his voice full of shame. I forgot who was really there for me when we were kids. I didn't need a formal apology. I just needed him to see the truth. I walked over and pulled him into a quiet hug. Now you remember, I whispered into his shoulder. The years of betrayal began to melt away, and the deep, loving bond we once shared was finally strong enough to begin healing. Amber, desperate to regain some control over her fractured life, posted a long, tearful apology on Instagram. It was filled with excuses about organizational oversights and wedding stress. She even tagged me, begging for forgiveness and reconciliation. I read it once and then put my phone away. I never responded, I didn't comment, and I didn't acknowledge the post in any way. My silence, at this point, was the loudest response possible. It was a final, cold message that her performance was over, and I was no longer interested in giving her any platform. The event company finished their massive renovation on the property. They officially renamed the gorgeous venue. It was no longer the family house. It was now simply called Mia's Haven. Every newlywed couple who booked the venue now saw a beautiful bronze plaque near the entrance of the main building. It read, dedicated to the enduring values of family, loyalty, and truth. My name, which had been so purposefully hidden from one guest list, was now permanently immortalized at the entrance of hundreds of others. I used the profits and the positive publicity from the article to expand into a booming business focused on event management and property consultation. My success was built on honesty and transparent contracts. Ironically, my first major booking came from Amber's own cousin, Sarah. I love the integrity of your company, Sarah told me. After what happened, I only want to work with someone I can truly trust. I smiled, accepting the contract. My humiliation had been successfully converted into a profitable enterprise. Years later, I saw Amber at a high-profile charity gala. She was standing alone, looking noticeably older and defeated. She timidly approached me in the crowded room. Are we okay now? She asked, her voice quiet and unsure. I looked her over, then smiled warmly, a genuine smile of confidence and contentment. I'm better than okay, Amber, I replied, my voice strong. You tried to erase my name from your guest list, but you see now, I'm the invitation you'll never lose again. They thought they could steal my identity, my home, and my brother. They planned the perfect party and forgot the most basic rule of real estate and family loyalty. They hid my name from one single guest list, believing that exclusion was the key to their perfect life. But they learned the hard way that when you betray the person who built and owns the ground you stand on, the consequences are profound. They hid my name from the guest list, but they completely forgot I own the guest house. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for more true life revenge stories.